the most frustrating UFC fighters to watch. That's what I want to talk about today, guys. For one reason or another, these fighters are extremely frustrating to watch. Maybe it's the way they fight. Maybe it's because they have low IQ moments, or they don't do something that could easily get them to win in the fight. It's one of those things. Let's get right into it, starting off with Marlon Vera. Now, Marlon Vera's career annoys me because this guy has like 9-10 losses in the UFC, and a lot of them could have probably been avoided if he just didn't fight like a coward. Marlon Vera has one of the best chins in UFC history, but he fights like he's scared. Like, I don't understand. If you see this guy in fights, he just doesn't have high output. He throws low output the entire fight, and that's why a lot of his fights, you'll see him get like a knockout in like the third round. Like, he's typically getting dominated when he doesn't need to be. I know that sounds crazy, but I feel like Marlon Vera could be so much better. Like in the Frankie Edgar fight, he's getting dominated by Frankie Edgar at like 40 years old. And then in the third round, he pulls out a front kick to the face and finishes the fight. Like, dude, Marlon Vera could be dangerous the entire fight, but he chooses to be dangerous in the third round. And sometimes not even in the third round. This guy he's extremely frustrating to watch because knowing that he has such an amazing chin and he could just, I'm not saying put your chin on a silver platter to get knocked out, but come on, dude, throw some power shots. Stop throwing freaking 4 shots around and then getting mad that you dropped a decision. Like, a lot of decisions that Marlon Vera's dropped is his fault for just not pulling the trigger, for just, I don't know, almost choosing to lose. You know what I mean? Like in the Figueiredo fight, last fight, he even said that he made it a point to throw more output. But even in that fight, man, it just wasn't enough. I need this guy spamming combos, spamming kicks. I mean, this guy has the longest leg reach in UFC history in terms of like his body size. Like, he has insane leg reach. This dude should be throwing kicks all day long. And what is he afraid of? To get taken down? He gets taken down anyways. He doesn't have great takedown defense. I don't know, man. If you know, you know. Marlon Vera is extremely frustrating to watch. That's my reasons. And yeah, man, hopefully going forward, he can pull the trigger more and stop fighting like he's scared. Let's move on to the next one. Leon Edwards. Now, Leon Edwards, he fights to the level of his opponents. And what do I mean by that? Leon Edwards is one of the best fighters in the world. Obviously, he was champion, but he seems to fight to the level of his opponents in a sense of, if he's fighting Nate Diaz, he fights to Nate Diaz's level. If he's fighting Kamaru Usman, he fights to his level. You know what I'm saying? Like, Leon Edwards can be great. It's like he just gets way too comfortable in fights and coasts. He coasts way too much. Like, he always finds a way to look bad in a fight, despite being a great fighter. Like, in the Bilal Muhammad fight, he gets dunked on his head by Bilal Muhammad, despite showing that he could get on top of Bilal Muhammad and rain down shots. In the last 20 seconds of the Bilal Muhammad fight, dude's on top of Bilal Muhammad, raining down elbows, cut open his forehead. Where was this the entire fight, Leon Edwards? It's so frustrating. It's like this guy has glimpses of being like an amazing fighter, but he just chooses to get way too comfortable in fights. Just like the second Usman fight, he's getting absolutely dominated. It takes his coach yelling and cursing at him to throw a head kick in the 5th round and get the win. Like, that was a Hail Mary win. I just feel like Leon Edwards just isn't switched on in fights, and he typically just fights at the level of his opponents. Like, in the Nate Diaz fight, he got way too comfortable in that 5th round, and he gets rocked by a 1-2 from Nate Diaz. And if Nate Diaz wasn't clowning, he low-key could have finished Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards was out on his feet. I don't know, man. Not to mention, this guy is so inactive. Where's Leon Edwards? It's not like he took a ton of damage in the Bilal Muhammad fight. Why isn't he scheduled to book another fight? I just think this guy doesn't want to fight. I don't know. Leon Edwards, he's one of the most inactive fighters in the welterweight division. That's a huge problem at welterweight in general. All the fighters are inactive. That in itself is frustrating. But watching Leon Edwards fight, guys, if you know, you know, it makes me want to punch a wall sometimes because I'm like, dude, Leon Edwards can be so much better than these guys. He has some of the most technical striking, but it's like he gets caught up in being such a technical maestro that he forgets, like, hey, I'm also a savage. Let's win this fight. Either way, that's my reasons for Leon Edwards being frustrating to watch. Let's move on to the next one on this list. We got Kevin Holland. Now, I'm going to say it, guys. Kevin Holland's entire UFC career is a cope. What do I mean by that? He takes the path of most resistance in fights so he can feel better about losing. That's what it seems like. Like in the Wonderboy fight, he's like, you know what? I'm going to not take down Wonderboy and strike with him. That way, if I lose, you know, I lost the striking battle to Wonderboy, you know? At the end of the day, he's one of the best strikers in the welterweight division, so I can cope with that. And it's like, it's almost like he took the Hamzat fight on short notice, knowing he would lose, just so he can say, yeah, man, I went in there and took the fight on short notice with Hamzat. he submitted me, but how badass am I? You know, I took the fight on 1 day's notice. And I love Kevin Holland, and his 2020 run of 5 wins and all those finishes were amazing. But it's like this guy has the talent to win fights, but it's like he chooses to have low fight IQ. And he gets upset whenever he loses fights. Like against the Jack Della Maddalena fight, he was upset that he lost that fight. But bro, you weren't doing anything. You were just sitting on the outside, kind of looking at Jack Della Maddalena with like a deer in the headlights. And it's like, it seems like he's also looking for a way out sometimes, man. I don't know. Maybe this is me reaching, but it seems like in the Roman Dolidze fight with the rib injury, it seemed like he gave up before he even knew he could continue, if you know what I mean. I understand it's a bruised rib, and I'm not the one in there getting hit in it. But Kevin Holland, he seems to mentally be defeated in a lot of his fights, and he's almost looking for a moral victory in a sense to say, yeah, I lost, but this, you know? I don't know. Maybe, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying about Kevin Holland, but just seeing this guy with his insane long reach, he has knockout power, and it just seems like he just can't put the fight IQ together to string together the wins. I know he can. I feel like this guy could go on a run, but I don't know, man. He just doesn't want to, I guess. Let's move on to the next one on this list, guys. We got Israel Adesanya. Now, you guys know Israel Adesanya is not my favorite fighter. I feel like he's a little overglazed in the middleweight division about his striking, but I'm going to give him some praise. He is the best striker at middleweight. I honestly believe that. Despite being outstruck by Sean Strickland, I still think he's the better striker. He's more dynamic. He has more tools in the striking than Sean Strickland does. I think it was just a bad style for him, and yeah, it showed in that fight. But the thing that annoys me about Israel Adesanya is, first of all, coasting Izzy is one of the most frustrating fighters to watch. Against like a Marvin Vettori in the rematch, against like a Jared Cannonier, and against like a Yoel Romero. It's clear this guy is more elusive and better than these guys on the feet, but yet he just chooses to fight on the outside and spam leg kicks for 5 rounds and then win a narrow decision. Like, he narrowly outstrikes Marvin Vettori in the second fight. Listen, I know he won pretty much every round, but it's like, dude, you should be dominating Marvin Vettori. Look how Robert Whittaker and Jared Cannonier made Marvin Vettori look. They made him look like an amateur. Israel Adesanya, I feel, has the ability to also do that, but it's like he chooses not to. I don't know, man. And the same thing in like the same thing in the Jared Cannonier fight, narrowly beating Jared Cannonier every round. It's so frustrating to watch. I mean, there were people in the stands leaving the fight against Jared Cannonier because it was so boring that they couldn't just fathom staying to the 5th round and watching the same thing over and over. Watching Izzy fight rounds 3, 4, and 5 is like watching just the same thing on repeat. It's like a loop. He's doing the same thing. Nothing's changing. And it's like, dude, he's so much better than that. He doesn't have to coast so much in his fight. I want to see Israel Adesanya try and pull the trigger. And we need contender Israel Adesanya. He's so much more dangerous than champion Israel Adesanya. It's like whenever he got the belt in some moments, he just, outside of the Paulo Costa fight, he just got way too comfortable with being champion. He's like, you know what? I'm going to narrowly beat these guys because I know the judges are going to give me the decision every time. That's what it seems like, honestly. Maybe that's a cope. Listen, I know I give Israel Adesanya a lot of crap, but like I said, I still think he's the best striker at middleweight. I think his striking's still overrated, but he's still the best striker at middleweight. And yeah, that's my reasons for Izzy. Let's move on to the next one, guys. Michael Chandler. Now, I don't know if Michael Chandler is paying the refs before the fights to let him cheat, but dude, he's gotten away with some of the most blatant cheating at high-level UFC you'll ever see. From fish hooking Dustin Poirier to putting his hand in the glove to against Charles Oliveira, he's grabbing the fence so much in the fight, stopping takedowns. He's putting his hand in Charles Oliveira's glove, and then against Poirier and Oliveira, he is hitting them with so many back of the head shots, and the ref is just like, "Oh yeah, go on, Chandler, destroy the back of that guy's head. Who cares?" And it's like, dude, what are we doing? And there was an interview with Demetrius Johnson in the MMA Guru recently where Demetrius Johnson was defending Michael Chandler, pretty much saying that, oh, dude, it's only cheating if you get caught. No, Demetrius Johnson, it's cheating, and it needs to be called out. Michael Chandler, in recent years, has been an extremely dirty fighter. And do I think he is intentionally a dirty fighter? I don't know. It sure seemed like it in the Charles fight, given how many fouls he committed. And he didn't really defend himself about it. But outside of the cheating, another frustrating thing to watch about Michael Chandler is that this guy has the talent to be a great fighter. But he's like, yeah, man, I'm going to put on a fight for the fans. Who cares about fight IQ and winning? Let's put on a fight for the fans. Boy, he's an absolute barn burner. There are moments in fights like the Dustin Poirier fight where he did that big slam against Poirier. Dude, Michael Chandler was low-key beating up Dustin Poirier the entire fight. He chose to go for a big slam against Poirier, ends up getting submitted for it. What else? And then in other fights against Gaethje, he just, in the third round, he just puts his hands up and walks forward with his chin in the air when he clearly probably could have won that fight. And another frustrating thing about Michael Chandler is I'm getting sick of his little post-fight speeches, calling out Conor McGregor. Like, bro, you're not fighting McGregor. You want to know why? Because McGregor's not fighting again. McGregor's 36 years old. He just came out of a civil lawsuit that made him look really bad. McGregor's not going to be back anytime soon. So stop calling out McGregor. It's getting desperate and cringe. Stop being a dirty fighter, Michael Chandler, and use your fight IQ to some degree. Good grief. Let's move on to the next one, guys. We got Sean Strickland. Now, the most frustrating thing about Sean Strickland is he'll be at the press conference talking about, we're going to go to war for you guys. We're going to put on a freaking war. We're going to bleed. And he just goes into the fight to throw teeps and jabs for 5 rounds. And it's like, dude, that's what we were expecting from the press conference. Like, if Sean Strickland talked like he fought, Sean Strickland talks like he's like fights like he's Jiro Prochazka, if you know what I'm saying. He's like, yeah, man, we're going to put on a war. And then he goes to a pitter-pat decision with Paulo Costa. Yeah, man, we're going to go to a war. Goes to a pitter-pat decision with this guy or this guy. This guy's had so many 5 rounds what I would call pitter-pat decisions. It's crazy. And it's like he has good wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and he just doesn't use it. He chooses to fight with his little Philly show and throw teeps the entire fight. And it's like Sean Strickland, like Izzy in moments, can feel like you're watching a fight on a loop. It's the same thing over and over. And that's honestly why I think Drick is going to beat Sean Strickland in the rematch. Because Sean Strickland fights the same every single time. Whereas Drick is Duplessis, he game plans. He looks like a different fighter every time he goes in there. He game plans specifically for each opponent. And speaking of that, man, Sean Strickland being a Karen about a title shot. Listen, at the end of the day, whether you think he won or lost the Drick is Duplessis fight, on paper, he had 25 minutes to finish the fight, and he didn't. It went to a close decision, and he lost. He has 0 title defenses. And then he goes to a pitter-pat decision with Paulo Costa. To me, that doesn't warrant a title shot. I need to see a win streak. I need to see fighters stamping their way to a title shot, like a Khamzat Chimaev. Listen, I know he only has 1 win against a top 10 guy in the middleweight division, but we're talking about a former champion that he just completely destroyed and dismantled in the first round. Absolutely broke his teeth in. I know Robert Whittaker has an issue with his teeth, but you get what I'm saying. Sean Strickland needs to stop being a Karen, fight another guy, stamp his way to a title shot. And yeah, man, Let's Sean Strickland, let's stop talking about going to war with every single opponent if you're just going to throw jabs and teeps for 5 rounds and win a dominant or a close decision. It's just Sean Strickland, eh? Good thing for his press conferences. Imagine if this guy wasn't entertaining at press conferences. Where would he be in his UFC career? Let's move on to the next one. Jailton Almeida. Now, Jailton Almeida, when he fought Derek Lewis on short notice and just hugged him for 5 rounds, was one of the most frustrating fights I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, I was so pissed that I was hoping that every time the round started, Derek Lewis just went in there and just got a lucky KO. That's what I was hoping for. This guy immediately shoots in every single one of his fights. Jailton Almeida is one of those fighters. It's amazing. I've been watching this guy's fights for 8, 9 fights in the UFC now, and I still have no idea how his striking looks. I have no idea because he doesn't strike. Bro immediately shoots a takedown. And fair enough, it works for him sometimes. He ragdolled Curtis Blades on the ground, but in typical Jailton Almeida fashion, spamming takedowns against Curtis Blade, got him TKO'd with punches to the side of the head. And man, I'd like to see Jailton Almeida use more of his striking. I want to see how he is on the feet. He must not be great on the feet, man, if he's not confident enough to not immediately shoot a takedown in every single fight. And like I said against Derek Lewis, that was embarrassing. An absolute hug fest. And yeah, man, I don't really have much else to say about Jailton Almeida. Just for the simple fact that you know how he's going to fight. Every single Jailton Almeida fight, he's just going to hurry up and shoot and either dominate you on the ground or submit you. So yeah, that's the frustrating thing about Jailton Almeida. Let's move on to the next one. We got Jonathan Martinez. Listen, man, this guy has some of the best leg kicks in the UFC, but he doesn't spam them, and he should. This guy should be spamming leg kicks in every single fight. And that fight against Marcus McGee, dude, I wanted to bang my head against a wall, genuinely. Whenever he was in that 3rd round against Marcus McGee, clearly had him out on his feet. His legs were so destroyed from those leg kicks in the 3rd round. Jonathan Martinez busted up Marcus McGee's leg, and he's like, you know what? 2 minutes left in the fight. Let me clinch him against the cage and just hold him there, knowing that I have him out on his feet. One of the most frustrating things I've ever seen. Jonathan Martinez wasting 2 minutes of the end of the fight when he clearly had Marcus McGee hurt and probably could have got him a finish. I'm not saying he would have 100% finished the fight, but he could have made that a 10-8 round, dropping him multiple times from leg kicks. And yeah, man, this guy has some of the most dangerous leg kicks, and he just chooses not to use them. Like, what are we doing, Jonathan Martinez? You have great leg kicks. Let's put them to use. Let's not just sit back holding guys against the fence. Don't be Mario Bautista. Don't be Morab. You know what I'm saying? Let's move on to the next fighter on this list. Speaking of, Morab De Vales Vil. Now, guys, I'm about to go on a cope session about Morab, so prepare yourself. I think Morab isn't even that skilled, and this dude has literally gotten all the way to the title just by way of having good cardio. You can call me coping. You can say that cardio is a skill. I do not think cardio is a skill. I think cardio is more of an attribute, and it's genetic in a lot of people. Sometimes you have it, and sometimes you don't. Sure, you can work on it a little bit, but if you could get your cardio up there just by training, then every fighter would have amazing cardio, and that's just not the case. Morab De Vales Vil, first of all, I think he's on EPO, and that's why he has amazing cardio. If there's a press conference where he almost admits to taking EPO, if you know, you know. But this guy, man, he's just whenever you watch Morab, he doesn't have good striking. He doesn't really have good wrestling. His wrestling's sloppy. His takedown interest is sloppy. He doesn't have good submissions. He doesn't have dangerous knockout power. Like, I just don't see the skill in Morab. I literally see all cardio. Hey, guys, I'm Morab. I'll spam takedowns for 5 rounds, and my opponents can't hold up, and they can't get going because I break their rhythm with my takedowns over and over. And this guy does not seem to care to finish fights. Morab has one finish in his entire UFC career, and that was against Marlon Vera, who got finished by everybody. It's just frustrating to see, man. I want to see fighters that go for finishes. And yeah, Morab's a funny fighter outside the octagon. He has great skits, but just seeing this guy like not wanting to go for the finish and just beating our favorite fighters, guys. Let's be real. I'm coping right now. Morab beating our favorite fighters like Petr Yan. For some of us, like a Sean O'Malley. Just spamming. Like, the fight against Petr Yan was one of the most rage-inducing fights I've ever watched in my entire UFC time of watching as a UFC fan. Like, him spamming takedowns against Petr Yan. And Petr Yan defended most of the takedowns. He was like 11 of 49. It's just that this guy's cardio is so insane that the other guy can't get going because he could just spam takedowns the entire fight. And I guess that in itself is skill. I don't know, man. Watching Morab fight, it really pisses me off every time. I don't know what else to say. I need Umar to cave this guy's head in. That's what I'll say. Or Petr Yan in the rematch, but I just don't see a way for Petr Yan to win. Morab's just going to spam takedowns. Petr Yan's never going to get going. He's going to be too tentative, waiting for the takedowns. Let's move on to the next one on this list, guys. We got Rose Namajunas. Now, Rose Namajunas, despite being one of the best women's fighters to ever do it, she's KO'd Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She's KO'd Zhang Weili. She has 2 wins over both of those girls. She shows potential to be a world beater on any given night, but what does she do? She chooses to be coached by Pat Barry, her partner. Pat Barry might be one of the worst coaches in the UFC. I mean, she clearly needs to go back to Trevor Whitman. It's just embarrassing at this point. She's so frustrating to watch, dude, because that fight against Erin Blanchfield, she threw it away. She could have easily won if she just did a little bit more. It's like Pat Barry is almost coaching her to lose. Like, she's narrowly losing these fights, and Pat Barry's like, yeah, babe, you're doing great. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. They're booing because you're doing everything right. That means you're doing it right. Like, no, Pat. They're booing because Rose Namajunas is sitting tentative on the outside and just letting herself lose. She fights like she's scared whenever she's one of the most savage fighters, dude. She has knockout power in her hands. I don't know, man. Rose Namajunas getting trained by Pat Barry instead of Trevor Whitman is one of the most terrible career decisions I've ever seen. If you know, you know. Every time I watch Rose Namajunas fight, I just want to punch a wall. And they keep putting her in 5-round main events. Stop putting Rose Namajunas in 5-round main events. She's clearly, if Rose Namajunas is confirmed to be training with Pat Barry, the UFC needs to get wind of this and say, you know what, we're not putting her in the main event. She's going on the early prelims. That's my opinion, guys. Let's move on to the last fighter on this list. We got Jose Aldo. Now, the main thing frustrating about Jose Aldo is, if you guys remember back to the old days whenever he fought Uriah Faber, this guy has some of the most dangerous leg kicks ever in the UFC. He put Uriah Faber on crutches. He beat his legs up so bad. And the reason I say that's so frustrating is because midway through his career, Jose Aldo has resorted to just boxing, and he's literally just threw his leg kicking game out the window. I wonder if this is because of an injury, if it hurts too much. Like, does anyone know why Jose Aldo chooses to not throw leg kicks? I genuinely want to know, because it just seems like at one point, this guy was just one of the greatest leg kickers we've ever seen. And then now it's like, what are leg kicks? We're not going to do those. We're just going to box. And granted, he has amazing boxing, but can you imagine Jose Aldo throwing leg kicks and mixing in boxing with that? Dude, it'd just be insane. Another thing that's extremely frustrating about Jose Aldo to watch is he's way too comfortable getting held up against the cage. Listen, I know there's a lot to blame for Mario Bautista and Morab coasting and holding this guy up against the cage. And that in itself is frustrating. It's a cowardly fighting style. But, man, is it frustrating to see Jose Aldo almost accept getting holden up against the cage. I want to see him more hungry to get off the cage, more dangerous. I want to see him like being more explosive. Like, let's try to get off the cage. It seemed like he was just content with being held up against the cage in those two fights. And I don't know, man, that in itself was frustrating. Either way, guys, this was my list of some of the most frustrating fighters in the UFC to watch one way or another. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree in the comments. Who else is frustrating for you guys to watch? Like, who's a fighter that you guys watch and you're like, man, this pisses me off? That's kind of what this list was based off of. Fighters that in some instances can do so much better, but it's almost like they choose not to. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, as I said. Thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. Become a member of the channel to support me if you can. And thanks, guys. I'm out. Peace.